It's the Rangers Journal night.
Hello and welcome everyone to the Rangers Journal. How are you this evening, everybody at home watching? I'm joined by a couple of guests tonight. We're going to have a little bit of a conversation about our defensive setup for next season. So joined tonight, Doug, this is the first time I've been on with you. Let me say hello to you first. How are you getting on this evening, mate?
I'm good, thanks. Happy to be here to chat.
Good stuff, good stuff. And Ross, thank you for coming on again tonight, mate. You okay?
No, you're welcome, Billy. Good to be on again. Hey, it's a lot more stress-free without a Rangers defeat at the weekend, isn't it? It's almost, you may say it's quite enjoyable to have a break from it. We'll be back soon, so we'll have a lot more rants to kick up a fuss with soon.
I was just thinking, mate, I can't wait for the season to start back again, getting some signings in the door and things are moving along. I know everyone's saying there's going to be like a pre and a post Euros signing spree, so looking forward to all that. Tonight, though, we're going to talk about the defence going into the next season, as I was saying. Doug, can I come to you first of all? Overall, what was your impression of the defence for last season?
I mean, on the whole, my opinion is the same as it's been the last couple, in that broadly the defence is decent. However, there's a bit of a steep fall off towards the end. They did start to ship more goals as time went on, although quite a lot of them were kind of post the season going anyway. But I think it's slightly better than a lot of people give it credit for. I think there's a bit of recency bias in terms of how badly the season ended, people forgetting how well things were at points during the season. But at the same time of seeing that, I think everyone's at the same point where it does need a bit of a refresh, particularly because a lot of the key players are obviously older and continuing to age, and that's starting to show creaks. So, yeah, better than I think a lot of people maybe think it is, but definitely room for improvement.
Do you agree with that, Ross?
Yeah. I think my opinion changed throughout the course of the season. I think we can often be, what's the word? In some way taken away from the frailties by the attributes going forward. So Tavernier, I'm thinking about in that position. And I think over the course of the season, it's grown more and more obvious that actually it's an aging and a tiring defense that just needs work. It needs serious surgery to make it fit for the future. I think it was true when we went to play against, I think it was one of the European games, maybe Betis or maybe one of the Dutch teams. And it was the same lineup that we'd play. Sorry, it was Benfica. And we had the same lineup that we had in years gone by. Now, at the time, I wasn't really too bothered about it. I thought, that's okay. It shows there's a solidity there. And they've been there, right? They've done it. They've been to finals. They've got a good working relationship. But obviously, those frailties and issues and age soon started to kind of show through the cracks a little bit. I was just looking at a few stats there before. We're conceding 0.95 goals per game at home and 0.74 goals away this season, which just shows that our home form as well within that, which somewhere you'd expect our defense to be on top and constant pressure, it's just not been good enough.
Yeah. Let's talk about goalkeepers first. Ross, who's the first goalkeeper you remember in your Rangers supporting career?
I can remember Gorham. Sort of very vaguely. Stefan Klos, Lionel Charbonnier, those were kind of the early ones for me.
I'm just trying to gauge people's ages here. Doug, what's your first Rangers goalkeeper?
I'd be the same kind of. Right. Gorham was the first to remember, but faded memories at this point.
Well, I guess I'm a couple of years older than you, because I do remember Chris Woods, and every single successful Rangers team I've seen is basically founded on a fantastic goalkeeper. Now, I don't think that's any different this season because I think Jack Butland is a fantastic goalkeeper. I personally wouldn't want to be rushing him out the door, but I think if we're thinking about it logically, if a double figures offer comes in for Jack Butland, that's the kind of money we can really change the team with. Do you agree, Doug?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I completely, wholeheartedly want Jack Butland as our goalkeeper next season, but at the same time, we have to be realistic about our financial place in the world, and that's a place where, if, like you say, if we get a significant offer, there's too much extra benefit that we can get out of it. You know, if we get somewhere 15 to 20 million for him, that could be 4, maybe even 5 players worth of talent that could obviously have a huge impact when we're getting rid of so many people at once. Or they may even allow us to get rid of more if we're able to bring that in. So, yeah, I think, you know, I'm pretty sure most Rangers fans, if not all, are probably in the same place where it's like, yeah, keep them if we can, but if that offer comes in, we know we'll have to do it, unfortunately.
I'm going to come with a follow-up question after you answer this, Ross, but what's your take on what do we do if we get a decent offer for him?
Well, I guess there's a sliding scale of what a decent offer is. You said a double digit. Now, to me, obviously that's a huge broad spectrum there. So I think anything between kind of 10 and 12, 13 million, I think we wouldn't be accepting that. And that's my genuine thoughts on that. I think we would hold firm. The days of Rangers undervaluing players seems to hopefully have passed. I remember we had a 5-10 year period where we were in a really bad position of being, you know, these low ball offers coming in and we were accepting them and just allowing players to move on. I think there needs to be a level of pragmatism within the Rangers support that says, if we want to be not just a here and now, it's a huge clear out, therefore it's a fire sale. You know, everyone can take who they want at any price they want. We need to think about our long-term business approach to these transactions and actually think, okay, well, we can put a stake in the ground here to say, if you don't stump up, he's not going. I understand the benefit to the club of the amount of money. And I think that's where the balance point comes and the tipping point towards, okay, now we can sell. For me, that figure's around 14, 15 million pounds. I think that's a realistic figure. And I think for the age and his experience, balanced with the fact that, yes, it has been in a lesser league, I think that's a fair figure, depending on what club it is as well that comes in for him. Obviously, you start talking overseas clubs, your Turkish, your Saudi, you start adding a few notes on the end, but, you know, who doesn't? But I still think that there is that balance point where you have to say, okay, that's a fair valuation given his age, his experience, and the league that he's coming from. Let's rebuild. But also, you know, we need to stand firm so that in future transactions, when these lads who do come through, you know, the new players that will want to get in that fit this trade and model, your Diamandes of the world, we're not going to be strong-armed into a deal that just doesn't work for both parties. Yeah,
letting players go for 500,000 just to get rid of them. Yeah. Hopefully those days are gone. My follow-up point was more that there could be a case to say that we're kind of spoiled by having Jack Butland. We don't necessarily need a keeper as good as him to win the Scottish Premier League, do we?
You'd think that, wouldn't you? I mean, I guess it just harks back to where do we have our ambitions as a football club? If we're talking SPFL and the Premier League, then yes, you're right. If we're talking European ambitions, then there will be shaky moments that you need big characters in between the posts at the back. We had it with McGregor. I always remember the Werder Bremen away game, and I was relatively young, or a bit younger than I am now. And I just remember thinking to myself, this guy is single-handedly keeping us in this game. You know, this is a priceless performance. And we saw it again when we had the great European runs in the past sort of 3-4 years. So it depends what the aspirations of the club are. I think, to answer your point, yeah, we probably don't need a Jack Butland. But we definitely need someone who's going to be capable and called upon, and not necessarily peppered with shots, but he has the concentration. They have the ability that when called upon, you can trust them and lead a defense of potentially young players in front of them. I think that needs to be taken into consideration as well.
Yeah, you just reminded me of that. It's a bit later than Werder Bremen, but the save that McGregor makes with his fingertips, was it Slavia Prague or something, just after we won 55? Yeah. He's hung over, and he gets down and gets that one with his fingertips. It came up on Twitter the other day there. Doug, what would you be looking for if we do sell Jack Butland? What qualities do we need in the goalkeeping position, other than just being a good goalkeeper?
I think you want someone who's got that character that Butland's brought. I like goalkeepers that are vocal, that have a presence that's as big as they are. McGregor had that in the fact that he would just absolutely bollock everyone and everything around him. Gorham was the same, actually. But then, when you look at keepers like Kloss, who are a little bit more withheld, but still, they had that sort of strong personality behind them to really make sure that those in front of them are doing what they should be doing. The defence is a unit, and I think that the best defences are the ones that work as such and are talking or shouting at one another. So, I'd want someone with that type of personality. I think that Jack Butland type and level of goalkeeper is exactly the type of goalkeeper the Rangers should have, because I think that great goalies, it's a unique position and they're unique personalities, and I kind of feel like they often thrive at big clubs like ours, and they will make the difference. So obviously in Europe in particular, but even if we're talking about the league, games that can sway that will be Old Firms, and that's a European level game. And you saw it in recent years with Man United, how many points De Gea saved them, and practically was carrying that team for a while. And I think that that's exactly the type of level of goalie we want. I think the downside we've got with Butland is because he's English, he's in the spotlight, and particularly obviously he's been in the spotlight for the England team as well. And so that makes it a bit more difficult to keep. But I think we can keep keepers of that level at the club who maybe don't have that same immediate connection back down south. So yeah, that's the kind of thing I'd be wanting for us to get.
Yeah. And now, as an if, it's definitely not a foregone conclusion that Butland is going to be leaving, and so he very much could be a goalkeeper next season. But we do have a backup who's wanting out the club purely because he's not getting time to really show what he's able to do, and that's McCrory. If Butland had to go, is there a case maybe we could talk McCrory into staying? And would we want that? Ross, I'll come to you on that.
It's a really tricky one. My heart is saying yes. Give the guy an opportunity. Give the guy a chance. Whenever he's been called upon. I remember the Old Firm last season. I think it was. He had a stellar game and has done no wrong when he's been called upon. So part of me says yes. And there's obviously a reason that he's at Rangers Football Club, right? He's not going to be a poor goalkeeper. I guess the challenge then is he able to play 60 games a season in Europe? Is he going to be able to have that mental strength or the physical capabilities, all of the things that a professional footballer needs to play that level of competitive sport? And it feels like a risk. I think, Doug, you mentioned there about how Man United have had challenges with goalkeepers in the past and how that's felt, having a team that you're trying to build and you don't have the stability of a foundation at the back, right? A goalkeeper who you can trust and depend on. And those across the city, I remember when there was a Greek goalkeeper, Barkas, came in, and there was panic stations, and rightly so. It is a foundational position of the goal. So I think in one sense we've been so blessed with it that maybe we do take it for granted as a position that we will have a high quality goalkeeper there. But then again, you think putting Ross McCrory into nets with potentially a new 3 out of 4, maybe 2-3 out of 4 defenders new as well, it could be a risk. Well, it is a risk. I don't think there's any other way of looking at it. So from Clement's point of view, does he want to cash in if the opportunity's there, or does he want to use Butland as that rock, as that consistency, and as someone to build the defence or the sort of whole defensive unit around? It's a really tricky one.
Yeah, Doug, if McCrory was offered that position, if Butland to leave, would you be comfortable with him taking over as number one?
I think, being a Rangers lad, I want to give him the go so he can have the opportunity. I have to admit, though, I'm not 100% convinced. I don't know if I'm being unfair with him, but when I look back at McGregor when he was younger, he had a couple of loan spells away where he really properly excelled, and I thought, he gave me a bit of an air of he looks like he's got something. And obviously when he came back and got his opportunity, more than went on to show that. And I'm not sure McCrory's done that when he's gone on loan. But saying that, he's played fine when he's played for us in the games he's had. Obviously, he's played in Old Firm games and things. So I think I'd kind of probably feel similar to how I did when McLaughlin got his opportunity. Willing to give him a go, hoping it goes well, but just a little part of me would be going, I'm not 100% sure. I feel in my gut that his future's away from Rangers, but we'll need to see.
Well, he has submitted a transfer request. I think last season was when he did that because he wanted first team football, even to get a loan, but we kept him around because I guess we kind of needed him there as a backup. A replacement that has been touted is Liam Kelly. Now, he's done something strange this week and signed a 1 month extension. So Motherwell gets some money for him being away at the Euros, which is pretty good of him, to be fair. I don't know how these things work. I know none of our players offer to do it, at least, as far as I know. But Liam Kelly, he's been at the club before, hasn't he, Ross?
Yeah.
He's not likely going to come in and, if Butland had to leave, and be Rangers number one, is he?
I don't know how these chips are going to fall, to be honest. It's a really unusual situation. It feels like he's a natural replacement for McCrory, and I think it's probably just a 1 in, 1 out. I think that's probably the way they'll phase it in. I'd be, obviously McLaughlin's away as well now, so we don't have that trusted backup goalkeeper that probably McLaughlin was, I would say, ahead of McCrory. In terms of he's been there, he's done it, he's played at a reasonably high level. So for me, it just feels like a 1 in, 1 out at the minute. Now, obviously, things can change if Butland does get that move away or whatever happens. Things may change, but I still see him being a backup keeper. Now, whether or not Clement said, okay, I can guarantee you at least 15 games a season, and that'll be your cup games and etc. That there's a very strong possibility that's the case, which may mean that if Butland is replaced, we look at someone who's of Butland's age, if not a little older, but as maybe a bit more wise. And I know Kelly is 28, so he's not a spring chicken, but for goalkeeper years, he's got a long time ahead of him. So potentially he could take that step up if he impresses in those games. So it'll be interesting to see how Clement, pulls this jigsaw together and how that'll work. As I say, for me, the big worry is the potential naivety of the defence. If that does, and if the things we're hearing about Tav and Goldson are true, which we may come on to, then there needs to be some solidity and trustworthiness in that defensive unit.
To be honest, McLaughlin's away. McCrory looks to be away as well. And there's a possibility that we get some good money for Butland, so we could end up with a completely whole new 3 goalkeepers with us next season. We probably best move on. We have spent nearly 20 minutes talking about the goalkeeping position, but I think that just shows you how important the goalkeeper is to Rangers fans, isn't it?
Billy, can I just...
Yeah, on you go, right?
Just say
sorry.
One more thing. No. It was just I ended up watching... There's a YouTube episode that came out with Tubes and Jimmy Bullard and Alan McGregor, and in it, they ask him, so have you ever actually announced your retirement? And he said, well, no, I haven't actually. I've just kind of phased it out. He's not the most sort of guy in the limelight to put a Facebook post on or something. So who knows? Maybe we'll see Shagger back.
Fair enough. Move on because there's 2 big positions we're going to talk about, as Ross alluded to a minute ago. But left back, we have said goodbye to Borna Barisic. We seem to be getting some interest, at least from back in his home country, and Ridvan Yilmaz. Is that something would you cash in on him, Doug? Has he lived up to what you hoped he'd be at Rangers?
I think he's shown signs. He's been quite dynamic when he's gotten runs in the team, but those runs just haven't lasted long enough. There is a bit of an injury concern there. I'm not quite as concerned about it as I think a lot of people are, but I do think that if we get a good offer, it would be worth probably looking at. We've got one guy in, we've got some irons in the fire for some other left backs as well. So again, he seems to be a player that's held in quite good regard, sort of back in his home country, and therefore kind of similar to Hadji, seems to kind of just push his his value up that little bit. So yeah, I probably would if it was a good enough offer. Just because, as I say, we've seen signs, but there's just that slight concern of consistency.
Yeah, and Ross, just what Doug was saying there, he's shown signs, but it's been 2 seasons he's been with us, isn't it? Is
Yeah.
he able to play a whole season, and is that maybe why we're looking at other left back options?
I think we've had a challenge in that we've had Borna Barisic there for so long, and I think he's been relatively poor for the past 2 or 3 seasons. Well, 2 seasons definitely. He's been pretty poor. So when we've had someone else to come in there that is, quick, able to run at defenses, commit defenders, get a good delivery in the box, we've been impressed. And I think it's fair to say that when he has played, he has been impressive. The big worry, like a lot of players are, as you said, can he play a full season? We got him in 2022, 5-year deal. Again, at the time, it felt like a big coup. I think Besiktas were quite miffed that he'd left. And I think we probably made some promises to the lad. So again, it was a player that we brought in. I think it was a sort of player trading type model. He's only 23 now, so what he was sort of 2021 when we got him. So I still think there is a high ceiling of potential with him. But the question mark is on his fitness. Can he withhold the demands of a full season? And I think I'd answer no. And if this is him at 23, what's he going to be like at 25, 26, potentially older? But that being said, I think if he got a good season under his belt, I think his value would soon start to creep up more than what it is now. I could only see him really going for probably topping out at 4.5 million now if he went. And I think even then it'd be a push. So if we want to, cultivate him, give him a good pre-season, try and get him as strong as possible, I think there's a really good player in there. I was really impressed with the way that him and Cortez linked up. Albeit he's not the tallest player in the world, but I still think he's a strong player. You might be coming on to about Hefte, but obviously we've brought this lad in as well, who is another project type player. So he may want Yilmaz to be the sort of the stalwart of the defense, and then Hefte to supplement that and bring him through, and potentially look at it that way. Again, I'm not quite sure how that's going to pan out.
I can just say I was watching a podcast the other day there, and they apparently confirmed with him that it's Jefty and not Hefty. So
is it?
I was quite pleased with that, because I don't want a player called Hefty. So just to clear that one up. Will we move along the back line left to right, because I think the two at the right hand side of things are maybe more of the interesting discussion. Left-sided central defender at the moment, we've got really Suter and Ben Davies, don't we? Likelihood, Doug, is we'll probably have Suter. I think we're all hoping that we manage to move Davies on. Is that your thinking as well?
I'm not really too bothered either way, to be honest. I actually think that Suter's one of these players who's had a slightly raw deal, because of what I often call the Borna Barisic effect, because he made a horrific mistake against Celtic, and for huge amounts of fans, that was the end of it. I still don't think he ever actually is fully recovered from that, because obviously Suter did the same thing, but then Suter very quickly after went on a run of really good form, which kind of revitalised him in the eyes of fans. But Davies never really got that chance, despite kind of quietly doing that. I think Davies is a solid enough defender. He could be a part of the group. I think maybe the worry is that are we paying him too much to just be a part of the group and not be a starting player? So that would probably be the main worry. But to be honest, if we start the season and he's still there, I wouldn't be terribly upset. But yeah, I think that's probably where I stand by him.
Ross, your opinion?
I'm a fan of Davies. I think he's a good defender. I think he adds a bit of balance. Obviously, having that left preference in the way he plays. I think he complements previously when Goldson's been there. He's looked all right. Obviously, Suter, as you say, has had the majority of the season in that position and sort of had his ups and downs, predominantly ups. But I still think Davies is a good player. I think the only thing for me is from what I believe, his wages are high. And I guess it's a kind of a moment in time now. Either we lock him in and he stays, or you try and get some value for him. So it's been a weird season for Davies. I think he's kind of been on the fringes of leaving a few times. I think 2 or 3 times he's kind of looked as though he's gone. Not even in the starting sort of full squad, even though he's fit. Doesn't seem to be training with the first team. All these signs that would point to the fact that he's not really involved with the setup, and then he's come in. But I would say that I think the games that he was brought in towards the back end of the season, I thought he looked good. I thought he looked strong. I thought he's confident on the ball. He has a mistake in him, but I'll ask you to find a centre back that doesn't, because they all do. And I think that there's been culprits throughout the team that have meant that there's been too much stress on the defence this year. So I wouldn't say it's pointing the finger at Davies is the right thing to do necessarily. And also, you see every day on Twitter, get rid of them all, let's get a full new team in, but it'll be the same people 2 weeks into the new season that we call in for Clement's head if it doesn't land. I think there's not enough pragmatism and logic in the way that a lot of the Rangers support go about their thought processes, whether that's for clickbait or reactions, I don't know. But I just think there needs to be some level of consistency. There needs to be some level of experience and a level head. And I think he does bring a calmness. I think he brings a good aerial presence, and that's could be used going forward, maybe a bit better. But I think see how he gets on pre-season. If there's interest in him and the value's right, then obviously move the guy on, free up those wages. But at the same time, I think there's a good player in there. I've always been quite a fan of Davies.
To be honest, I'm not. This seems to be he's much maligned, I guess, by some sections of the fans, but and maybe it's just he lacks the kind of aggression that we maybe like from somebody like Suter, who's your blood and thunder kind of defender. He's maybe more of a ball playing defender than your really aggressive commanding type. Yeah, that's I feel about that.
Yeah.
I think I felt much like what you said, Doug. I don't think that's a main position I'm particularly worried about. I'm fairly happy enough with them two being there. Also wouldn't be an objection to someone else coming in that position. We've heard for the last few weeks of interest in Tavernier and Goldson from Saudi Arabia, but let's focus on Goldson at the moment. First and foremost, Doug, do you think it's time for him to go either way?
Yeah, I think we've gotten to that point. Probably with both of them. Although I'll contradict myself when we get to Tavernier, where the fans have just turned too far with him. I do think, as I said before, obviously we're getting rid of a potentially a load of players from this backline that are all older players. So, we've kept Balogun, who's obviously older, will bring experience. If we potentially have Davies, he's a decent age. Even Suter is a decent age now as well. Has played a good amount of football, has good experience at international European level now as well. So we've got a decent crop of experience in there. So we've got this opportunity now to be bringing in younger players into the defence, future-proofing it hopefully for a couple of years. So I do think it is maybe perhaps the right time to move on. If there's the interest from Saudi turns out to be an actual thing, then that's probably a win-win for everyone. He'll get a bumper deal for his last couple of years playing. We hopefully get an extra few pennies out of that we wouldn't get elsewhere. So it feels like if that is a genuine option, then it could work out for everybody.
Yep. Ross, before I just get your opinion on Goldson, I don't want to take any of your points, but for me, he's become, whether rightly or wrongly, symbolic of failure, I guess. He's won a league, he's won Scottish Cup, won a League Cup, but that's 3 out of I don't know how many, possibly 20 cups he could have won. I think he's probably lost. I've lost confidence in him being able to be that kind of commanding centre half that we need to control the back, and he really is one of the main, I guess, leaders in the dressing room. And for me, it's time for him to be replaced by somebody else. But what do you think?
Yeah, I've always been a huge fan of him, and everything I'm about to say is from a place of the guy has been a fantastic servant for Rangers, and has given a lot to the club. We've given a lot to him, but he's given a lot to the club, and he's been a really, really great player. the first name on the team sheet, apart from, you know, McGregor. I would say that the first name on that team sheet, and a real leader, and through good times and through difficult times. But I think, Doug, you said a really good point there, which is I just don't think the fan base and you know, the people around the club have that level of confidence in him. I think he's kind of lost that now. There was one thing he said on the podcast that he did, which went onto YouTube, that has stuck with me. And he said, reaching the Europa League final was the best moment I'll ever have in my career. It won't top that. Obviously, I've paraphrased that slightly, but that was what he said. And I just thought to myself, that is not the attitude of a Rangers player that I want to see wear, you know, the shirt of my club. I want someone who says, I did it once, I tasted defeat in that final, and next time I'm going to win it. We are going to get back there, and I'm determined, more than anything, that we're going to get back there and win that and make amends for losing that final. And I think more and more, I've started to see that in the way he plays a bit. The hunger, the drive, the determination, the self-analysis. He seems to be someone that likes to blame people quite a lot on the pitch and point fingers, but is he really being, you know, introspective enough to actually say, how am I holding myself accountable? And if he thinks that's the pinnacle, then surely that means that he's on the descent now, right? by you know, deduction. So for me, I think it's the right time for him to go. I think, to what Doug said as well, it would suit all parties, whether or not, I know he's got family and other challenges there, but I think, you know, in this situation, money can talk. If it's 2 or 3 year deal that he gets out there and he's got a, you know, he's set up for life at that point, then I'm sure it'd be a great end to what has been a, you know, a great turnaround in his career from a lot of challenges early on. So I think I think the guy's done really well, but I do think it's time for him to leave.
Aldo made a comment, Aldo 55, it's up the list. I know you put it on the screen already, Ross, but when he signed on after his contract ended and Rangers did that announcement thanking him for 4 years and then thanking him for another 4 years, like baiting us in with trolling us a little bit, I was over the moon that he was going to be staying. Like, I didn't think we'd get someone of his quality, but more and more things come out that, why did he stay? Was it because there was no other offers for him? Or did he really just want to stay with us? I mean, I understand why I wouldn't want to leave, but was it just the fact there wasn't a better payday for him elsewhere? There doesn't seem to be any other noise other than these Saudi links for someone coming in for him. So are we likely, if that rumour isn't true, Doug, are we likely to probably still have him next season?
Yeah, I think that's the one sort of thing about all this. Obviously, there's a big fan push for him and Tavernier as well to go, and so fans have really jumped on this. But it's such an obvious link because Gerrard's there. The same thing was said last season as well. In the summer, that Gerrard was potentially interested in one of them, and it's the same again. And I mean, we saw, I think it was less than 24 hours after Gio got his job with Besiktas, he was linked with Rangers players, including Tavernier. So there's that thing that, is it just all, you know, smoke and mirrors? Is it just media going, right, we need to make some stories? Okay, Gerrard, Tavernier, that makes sense. And I don't think though that precludes, if there's the will from the club to want to move him on, I think they probably can. There's so much in that highlight reel, like Ross said, he's been one of the best Rangers players of the last decade, certainly in defence, and so there's plenty in his highlight reel to show him off to teams, and I have no doubt in my mind that there's championship teams that would love to have a player of his calibre in their back four. So I certainly think if the will's there, that we can move him on if we absolutely want to.
If it does move on, who would you say, Doug? I'm not asking you to pick a player because that's not your job on here. But what are the attributes of a kind of new leader, commanding centre half at Rangers?
Pretty similar to what I said about the goalkeeper, to be honest. A big character, someone that can really marshal their defence and take control, make sure that, you know, there can be that voice. I think that's something that Goldson's been particularly good at. You see him talking across the line a lot when he's on the pitch. And I think, particularly for players like Barisic, who've got their confidence issues, he's been a big help there. So I'd want someone that can kind of replicate that. I don't know how much of that comes from the current players we've got, or the sort of the ones that have literally through the door in the last sort of hour or so, in terms of leadership and things like that. So I'd be wanting someone who can kind of replicate that aspect of what Goldson's brought to us.
Ross, yourself, what do you think?
Well, if you look at the ones who we've had in the past, I'm just reading through some of the comments there, guys. Thanks for dropping them in. We are reading them as they come through. Billy said a Davy Weir type, but then you go back to what are the qualities that he possessed, and I think someone said accountability. That's first and foremost. Responsibility, accountability, a hunger to improve, a hunger to not let your current state be the final state, but always have that kind of mindset of, I want to improve, I want our performances to improve, we can do better, we can keep going, we can play till the 95th, 96th, 98th minute, we will keep that hunger and that dependability. I think communication is ultra key as well in this. I would say maybe from the outside, that's one thing that Suter potentially doesn't possess, just as an observation, and maybe Ben Davies as well, that they're maybe not a vocal leader, but maybe more in the way they play and hold themselves. So I think from a kind of your figurehead centre back, they need to be a talker, a communicator. I think they need to be aggressive and aerial dominance. One of my favourite players was Lorenzo Amoruso. He had his faults, but any ball in that air, he's going there, whether he's taking 3 men out or meeting it cleanly. He's winning that ball. So I think all of these things, bring it all together to say that there needs to be someone who is trustworthy, someone who you can build a team upon. And that is one of my worries. If we do rebuild a full defence, who is that? Because I don't think there's, a prime Connor Goldson. Yeah, it's John Suter. There's question marks. Ben Davies, question marks. Balogun probably more than the others. I would say is dependable, but has he got the quality and in his forward passing and the way that Clement wants them to play football? So there's a lot of different things, and I'm really, I trust Clement. I do. I honestly think he'll get the right man for the job. So time will tell, but there needs some reorganization and some changes to that. But yeah, I don't envy his job.
No, I think you're right. I don't think there's anybody else currently at the club that has his presence, at least on the pitch vocally, and commanding the players round about. Or maybe because he is so loud like that the others don't speak up, if you know what I mean. Maybe that somebody like Suter could come in and fill that role of the vocal one that's calling everyone to account round about them and giving the hairdryer treatment to some of the players round about. To me, we'll move on to this in a minute, but somebody like Tavernier, who apparently does his captaincy by example and not by shouting at people, we need somebody that's going to give the players a kick up the backside from time to time, and I don't see anybody in the club at the moment that's going to do that. Any more thoughts on the centre half positions, guys, or should we move on to right back?
Come on, let's bite the bullet. Let's hit that right back position.
Well, there's more than one rumour actually recently. As you saying a minute ago, Ross, or sorry if it was you, Doug, that the links to Besiktas, and now that Giovanni's there, that he might be interested in bringing a couple of players from Rangers, which includes Tavernier, according to the rumours, and Tom Lawrence. I read in the comments earlier on. For me, my first thing is that as much as I said a minute ago, Tav's doing his captaincy through by showing what he can do. I don't think I've seen a player like Tavernier play for us. Someone in the right back position that has so many assists, has so many goals, and I know a lot of them are penalties, but he still has to step up. And a lot of these penalties have been big nervous moments for him, and he puts them away. Okay, he goes through patches where maybe misses one or two, but for the most part, he's a reliable penalty kick taker as well. I think he's been a great captain for us. Unfortunately, he's tarred a bit, for me, the same kind of brush. He's just not managed to dominate Celtic enough in this time that he's been there. But It's going to be a sad day if it is. For me, if he does go, whether he goes now or goes in the future, it's going to be a sad day when he leaves, because I've enjoyed Tav playing for us. But I'm going to open this up to both of you now, because Doug, earlier on you said you were going to contradict yourself, so I'm going to let you do that now. What's your opinions on Tavernier staying or going?
Yeah, so I mean, everything we've said about Connor Goldson can be said about James Tavernier. However, and I'll put this straight up to the front, I'm 100% biased because I absolutely love James Tavernier. He's my favourite. He's been my favourite Rangers player in recent times, and he's the one player that's kind of made me feel similarly to how I used to feel sort of in the good old days. I feel like at those high points that we've had, few as they've been. But trying to be more rational, I do think the difference between him and Goldson for me is that I still think he has a lot to offer us for another year at least. But I do think that we do have to, if he stays, then we have to transition and start the movement away from relying on him, because that's what we do. And I think that is perhaps a part of the way that the malaise for the team as a whole has come, that people, maybe we don't have enough other people who are willing to step up and be that player. Too many maybe just leave it to him because there's been so many times in the past where he has been the one. I do think he gets a lot more abuse than he deserves for things like being the captain, because I think that he's shown on numerous occasions all of the same types of attributes of captains in the past that we've had. But the difference with him is, captains are, you talk about, captains dragging teams through, and he's done that at times. So even this season, we won the trophy. We won was a goal from Tavernier. But the difference between him and those captains of the past is the players around him, he can only drag so far, and there's only so much he as a single person can do. He is on the decline. The latter third of last season we saw it, and then again to a greater degree the latter third of this season we saw it. But again, I think similar to what I think I touched on before, I think there's a bit of recency bias in terms of people are saying he's completely done. But when you look at if you look at the first 2/3 of the season, he largely was the same Tavernier that he's been for the last few years, albeit that little bit slower, not quite as rampagey. But like you say, still scoring goals, still getting assists, still our most creative player and one of the most creative players in the league. When you look at the chances created, big chances created, and stats like that, he's still getting those numbers. There was a tweet by I forget. I think it was Adam Watson from Heart and Hand, put up the sort of chances created per 90, and Tavernier was in the top 10 of the league for that there, along with players like we had Cantwell, Dessers, and Lawrence, I think, was in there. But the big thing that struck out with me was of all other players that were in that top 10. At least about 6 of them Tavernier had played double the minutes of, and for me to have that consistency over large periods of time is what is the mark of better players. People can go up and down in form, but if you're able to keep your consistency, that's the mark of a better player, and I think he largely does that. But with his age, he just can't play 60 games a season anymore. And I think that's the key point. So if he stays, if we manage his time, see the transition. So if we use Sterling as an example, whether it's him or someone else, we say, right, we're going to be bringing you in. You're going to play at least half of the games this year at right back. And Tav only plays maybe 30, 40. I think we can get the best out of Tavernier without him being tired out, without him being forced to be, as I say, one of him and Butland played every single game this season, and I think if we were to dial that back, we can still get the best out of him. Even if you take his penalties away, he was still the highest scoring defender in the league, equal with someone else, whom I forget. So all those things are still there. we just have to start managing him if we want to get the best out of him for the whole of the year. And if we do that, I think there's still plenty to get out of him, and that's for me the difference between him and Goldson. That, and obviously I'm a total fanboy, so I'm biased from the bat. If the aspect about obviously there's the captain saying a lot of people obviously saying we need new voices. I don't disagree with that either. I do think that we do need new ideas, new things to inject in there. But I believe if we're going to get in a player that can be that next talisman, then he doesn't need to be the captain straight away. He can either come in and, again, if Goldson leaves, maybe he makes someone Clement picks who he thinks is going to be his next guy and makes him the vice captain. Or even if he's not the captain, if someone is that player and can have that effect, it shouldn't matter. He should be able to join in with the group and be a voice that can help us move forward. So I think that's kind of my piece there. If he goes, then as I say, I'll be upset, but I will understand the reasons why. As I say, everything we said about Goldson is largely true about Tavernier, so I'll understand if he goes. I'll just be absolutely gutted that he does. But I still think there's a win-win scenario to Tavernier being kept.
Before I come to you, Ross, I think I've got to agree. How many times last season did Tavernier play when he didn't need to? He didn't need to play as many games as he did. He didn't need to play against Dumbarton, for instance, in the Cup. We would have won that game without him, and there's other instances too. But Ross, give me your feelings just in general on James Tavernier as his time at Rangers, and does he have more time at Rangers?
Well, firstly, I think it's worth just calling out, and I'm glad you've done the pod this way, Billy, that you've separated out Tav and Goldson, because I think the fan base has gotten into almost like a muscle reflex that says if you say Tav, you have to say Tav and Goldson. But let's just split them out for 1 second, and I'm really glad you've done it this way, because James Tavernier has been, and this might be divisive, but more than warranted his Hall of Fame, I guess, reputation and award for his contribution to the football club. I think his time at Rangers has been, I think, probably in my lifetime, the one single player who has contributed more to the club in his performances than anyone I can think of over a prolonged period of time, right? Consistently. I think his goals and his contributions have played into that a lot. This year alone, 58 games played, which is a huge amount of games. I saw that it was put on there that no player should be playing. I think it was Mitch said no player should really be playing over 42 games. So a bit of mental tiredness, a bit of fatigue, a bit of all of that will play into it. He isn't 26, 27 anymore. He's 32. He's going to be 33 in October. So that guy, himself will be going through those natural things, and his performance levels will drop slightly. But 58 games played, 24 goals scored, and 12 assists. I mean, if that was a striker, you'd be absolutely elated with it. And I think the caveat on that you always hear is, but think about the goals that he's conceded through his defensive frailties, which is fine. But therefore, you build a team around that player. And I don't think we've got the right support system around him at the back to stymie those goals going the other way. If you've got a player who's a real asset going forward, and can contribute like that, then you make changes to facilitate that. I think there's another sort of voice in the Rangers community is we'll play him further up the park a bit, but he wouldn't have the same impact. Yeah. His impact is a late run. It is on the edge of the box. He does have a great shot on him and a great finish on him, but that tends to be coming from a deep lying position, which you just wouldn't be able to do. And even if you look at the way that teams are sort of calibrated in the Premier League now, a lot of right backs are moving forwards, and I dare say not a pioneer, like conscious pioneer of it, but Tavernier has kind of been that sort of right back making those longer runs into the box. He has kind of probably been one of those that has done that, and you see it now with your Pedro Porros, your Alexander Arnolds, your players who make those sort of darting runs that tend to score goals. I think it's been a very hard and thankless task for Tavernier in a way to try and unite the team in moments that have been really difficult. The whole sort of Beale fiasco, Gio's untimely finish at the club, and that's not easy for him to be a consistently optimistic and positive influence. But I think he's done it, and I think he could really hold his head high given the contribution that he's made to our club. In response to your second question, which was how do we progress with him, and referring back to what I said about splitting the two of them out, I think the guy is a really strong member of the team. You talk about leadership. He is the leader. He is our captain, our club captain, and he's felt defeat and he's felt these things. I think what you and Doug have said is really sensible, in the sense that we need to think about his games played. Can we start to, allow others to take that? And it's almost like, I was thinking about it as you were talking, it's almost like, I don't have any children, but taking the stabilizers off your child's bike for the first time, and letting him ride his bike without the stabilizers on. That's what we kind of need to do. We need to be brave enough to do that, and let the comfort blanket be ripped away for 1 or 2 games and see how we get on. And he has to feel comfortable being sat on the bench occasionally as well. There's that side of things to take into consideration as well. But for me, I think he's been a fantastic servant. I still think he's got a lot to offer. So I would be keeping him in the setup and the team, and just slowly starting to just wind him down slightly just this season. Use his experience, use his wisdom to impart in others. But I want to leave a question for you, Billy, if you don't mind. Those 24 goals and 12 assists this season. Now, not all of those were penalties, as you rightly said, Doug. So where are those goals coming from? Because it's not like they're goals that have he's nicked off the striker's toe and just pinched a goal from someone else. He's created a lot of those goals himself and pulled us out of the fire a lot of times. Where are those coming from?
I can't answer you, Ross, because the reason he's getting them is because he's the one dragging the team to get these goals, if you know what I mean. So exactly. It's all falling on his shoulders, and for me, we've just not had good enough quality players. Maybe for a wee bit after Christmas time, when the goals were getting spread round a wee bit more with a couple of new signings coming in, you could maybe say there was a case for it, but it didn't last long as these players got injured.
But also, Billy, on that, you'll get half the fan base going, well, Tav's not scoring anymore, so get rid of him. That is the sort of mentality. But I think that the greater impact from Tavernier is not just his goal contributions, albeit they are phenomenal, absolutely ridiculous. Like we're sort of desensitized to the fact that this guy's scoring, what's that, 36 goal contributions in 58 games. It's absolutely mental. It really is.
I've never understood where the real vitriol criticism of him comes. I mean, he's got frailties, as you mentioned, and defensive frailties. But what he does for the team is that's the next point I wanted to go into. If these rumours from Saudi interest, or even interest from Giovanni Van Bronckhorst, are true and taking him away, what on earth do Rangers do? Because do you try to go like for like and get a young player like he was when he came in, who does the same thing, this kind of pioneering position of being an attacking defender? Or do we just have to redefine that position and accept that we're not going to have a player like him that does what he can, for the foreseeable future? I'll stay with you, Ross, first.
It's not about that position, in my opinion. It's about the rest of the team, and it's about how you look at the goal contributions he's had. And yes, you can get someone that's directly replacement. You're never going to get a James Tavernier, not for the money that we will be able to spend or that sort of thing. But it's the other positions on the pitch. How do you create more from other positions to take that load away? And then you can just have a right back who's like a Yilmaz or a Borna, who contributes through deliveries or defensive stability and that sort of thing. I just think it's more about the other positions rather than that one. If he wants to keep playing the way we do, which I think is a dangerous, he's almost too good, right? So we then are forced to play in a certain way because we know he'll get certain goals. But once you've taken those stabilizers off, you need to look at where else the goals come from. And so for me, the job is to try and change the way we play, I guess, is what I'm saying. But then again, if someone turned around and said, okay, well, we can guarantee you a right back who's going to give you 36 goal contributions in a season, you'd be thinking, how do I turn that down? So it's a really tricky one.
Doug, can I come to you now? You're obviously, and with what you said earlier on, a huge Tav fan. I think we all, to be fair, all three of us are big fans of James Tavernier. If he had to go What's your thinking on how we should we change, or should we go like for like, try to find someone like him?
Well, straight up, there isn't. You can't replace a player like that. I mean, this is the highest, the UK's highest scoring defender of all time. You don't just replace like for like with that kind of thing. So I mean, for me, it's not really a question, because you can't find a player who's going to be, James Tavernier 2.0. So you're forced to change a bit. I think, Clement has his style of playing, his one, and if Tavernier goes, I think it arguably it makes it slightly easier for him to focus on that, because I think when you do have a player who has a unique quality or brings something unique to the team at such a high level, you're forced to go, right, well, how can I maximize that? Because, that's something we need. And I do wonder if that, people talk about the fact that, Tav's outlived all these managers. And so, well, the reason is because he brings these things, and all of these managers see that. And so, it's not just this season that he's played 60, near 60 games. He's done it pretty much every season. We had one season, was it last year before, where he had an injury for a short bit. But other than that, every season he plays pretty much every game. And it's because he brings all those things to the team, and every manager, regardless of how they've set up, because all of the managers have had their slight differences, have all sought to maximise that, because it's something that you want to, that you obviously want to do. I want to touch on one of the comments I saw there. Bluebells are blue. He said, "This is such a ridiculous question. If we had quality in the attacking roles, those goals would come." Yes, but and that's the problem. We've Tavernier's been here for how long, and has been the top scorer like practically every year. Now, yeah, that's aided by the penalties, but every year there's a good crop of goals. I think I'm right in saying he's still just under 50% penalties. So that means that half of all of those goals are not penalties. So other players are not scoring those goals alongside him. Sima has been one of the best attacking players we've had in the last couple of years, alongside Dessers. We've been pretty lucky, actually, with 20 and 16 from those two. So that's the problem. It's a big if, and the players that we bring in, it's a concern. It's a criticism I've made of that. I think at times we've shipped, in terms of like goals and assists, we've shipped large numbers out of the club at one time. So when we got the year that sort of Arfield and that crop of players left, you lost Kent, Morelos, Arfield. You lost, I can't remember the number off the top of my head, but it was something like 60 odd goal contributions amongst about 4 or 5 players. We got rid of Sakala and Cholak at the same time, and they had about 40 odd goal contributions between them the season that they played. And the players that we bring in aren't always replacing these numbers. And this season has actually probably been the best in the last couple of years that we've done that with Sima and Dessers. But I think the thing that we would need to pay attention to is like another thing that Bluebell said was that Tavernier can't defend. I don't generally like to be too too aggressive in my arguments, but I just have no time for that argument, because it's simply not true. Yes, he has got mistakes in him, and yes, they have become slightly more frequent. But Tavernier can defend. You look at any stat across defence, and it stacks up, both in the league, but also across peers in Europe as well. When you look at his stats, he stacks up as a defender. There was a story in January that he was the best defender statistically in the whole of Europe. People don't just make up these numbers. He can defend. He just has a mistake in him. And at the end of the day, going back to, again, the sort of financial climate and all this jazz, every defender we have will have a mistake in them. That's why they play in Scotland and not in the Premiership or the Bundesliga. So if they didn't have those mistakes in them, that's where they'd be. But having said that, for the mistakes that are there, and particularly, I think we as big as a bias as I may have, even I have to admit that Maeda has totally had the hiding of Tav this season. So there are things that do need to be looked at. Just because I'm saying he can defend doesn't mean that I'm letting him off with these things. We do need to look at that. Even when he was at his best, we had gaps at the right-hand side because of how he plays and because of how we want him to play. Because I think that's the other thing people sometimes forget. It's not that Tavernier is running away doing his own thing. Again, the team looks to maximise their strengths, and he has been one of those things. But if you're going to do that, then tactically the team as a whole has to play to that. And we've been very lucky in that when Jack was in his best period, playing frequently, and aligning with Goldson, they covered Tavernier, heading off into the final third perfectly, and we had very little trouble. But as Jack's played less and less, I think we've seen more and more with other players, and particularly with the less experienced players, we've seen those gaps, be exploited. So I think in the Benfica game, Tav got a lot of flack because both of their goals came from the right side, but both of them came from McCausland not following his runner, and Tav was ultimately left with two players, and he had to pick one of which to go to, and ultimately the other guy was left open and was able to score. That was a naivety, of the winger not tracking his man and helping in defence. So we'd need to address all of those things again, to make a success of it. But I think we could do that, particularly with the players we're bringing in who are going to be younger, fitter, and able to do that. But I also think that'll balance with the fact that Tavernier isn't necessarily going to be making the marauding runs of the past anyway. So, if again we've got the right cover in place and the team is working tactically together, then I think we'll see that area improve. I'll stop talking now because I feel like I've been talking forever.
Thanks very much, Doug. Ross, let's just not forget that Doug had went full Eric Cantona there and then attacked a member of the audience. So thank you very much for that, Doug. Guys, I can't believe we've been talking for over an hour on this, and I think we probably could go a bit longer, but we better wrap things up now. I want to thank both my guests this evening, Ross and Doug. Thank you very much, guys, for giving your time and coming on to talk about this. Thank you for all the comments coming in as well. We're reading them as we go. Can't always reply to every single one, but it's great to see them. Please tell your friends about us. Please like and subscribe, as it says at the bottom. Ross, we'll just come to you for final words.
Yeah, no, thanks everyone for tuning in, and great to hear those different opinions coming through. Please do like, subscribe, share. There's going to be loads of content coming out, and all these amazing rumor links that we're getting. Kai's doing some fantastic work in deep diving into them. So check those out on the Rangers Journal Twitter page.
Doug, thanks again for coming on. It's my first pod, as we're saying, with you. Hopefully do a good few more, but any final thoughts tonight?
I'd say I'm sorry for ranting about Tavernier, but I'm not. So I'm not going to. What I will do though is a wee plug. I'm going to be doing an interview this evening with someone who's familiar with Romanian football about our links with Albion Rahmani. So that's something that will be coming up on the channel soon. So people keep their eyes out for that.
Thank you very much, Doug. I'll look forward to seeing that one. Well, again, thanks everyone for watching, and we'll see you next time. Thanks.